So let me share with you one of my real passions, which is the world of sleep and dream. And I think this is really our first exploration into a topic that Ken intimated when he said, we're going to show you some practices that will introduce you to states of consciousness, yes? So this may be one that surprises you. And I think it's a fantastic way to look at dark retreat, look at the evening, the night in an entirely new way, and to bring this otherwise unconscious state of existence into conscious awareness. So what I want to do tonight is contextualize the practice a little bit to give you some idea of its importance in Buddhism. And I will share a little bit about nighttime techniques, things that you can do tonight. And then maybe tomorrow in my afternoon presentation, I'll give you some daytime techniques, because the daytime techniques are just as important as the nighttime ones. So each and every night when we go to sleep, whether we know it or not, we take a tour through the Trikaya. We descend, whatever metaphor you want to use, we descend from the gross realm, gross level of consciousness, in through the subtle level of consciousness, very subtle levels of, you could say even causal, non-dual. And then, of course, every morning we kind of recapitulate that, we reverse that and rise to so-called waking consciousness. So every night when we go to sleep, we have the opportunity to explore these levels of extraordinarily subtle levels of heart and mind, which, by the way, parenthetically, will be of enormous benefit to us when we die, according to the Buddhist tradition, because dream yoga in Buddhism came about as a way to prepare for death. So every night when we go to sleep, and Ken talks about this idea of recapitulation, or the theory of recapitulation, every night when we go to sleep, it's a concordant experience of what's referred to as the bardo of dying. When we descend into deep dreamless sleep, that's a concordant experience of what's called the luminous bardo of dharmata, which in fact is the enlightened state. So whether we know it or not, we descend into that every night when we fall asleep. And if we're very sensitive to it, between the rising and cessation of each and every thought. Morpheus, the god of sleep, the god of dream, Thanatos, the god of death, are twins. They're twin brothers. And who's the father? Who's Papa? Hypnos, the god of sleep. Sleep is just a code word for ignorance. So it is ignorance that gives birth to both dream and death. And by transcending ignorance, we transcend both of these, or we at least bring both of them onto the path. So according to both Vajrayana Buddhism, which I'm a student of, and Advaita Vedanta, we actually have it all backwards. This so-called waking state, because it's the most dualistic, is actually, this is the state where we are most asleep. And if we become aware of it as we descend into subtle and extremely subtle levels of mind every night, we're descending into greater and greater levels of non-dual awareness. So in deep dreamless sleep, where for most of us, and I'll talk maybe just a little bit about what's called sleep yoga. There is a practice for deep sleep. We're actually in the most non-dual elevated state, if we're aware of it. And then when we wake up into this so-called waking reality, we're actually the most asleep. We actually have it backwards. And these practices allow us to see that and then bring the insight from the deep dreamless state into waking consciousness. So dream yoga together is part of the Vajrayana teachings. By the way, Vajrayana is not part of the three-turning schema. It's outside of it. The three-turning schema is still held within Mahayana doctrine, just so you know. And one of the really interesting things about Vajrayana that really resonates with integral theory altogether is Vajrayana really is integral Buddhism in the sense that integral in the sense of integrated. It brings absolutely everything onto the path. A synonym for Vajrayana is upayayana, the vehicle of skillful means. And what this means is there is literally no state that is not brought to bear onto the path of awakening. Sleep, dream, death, sex. There are yogas and practices associated with each and every one of these so that we can basically, if we so decide, practice 24/7. And the practices I'll give to you tonight. I mean, think about it. We spend about a third of our lives in sleep, a state of awareness or consciousness that we know very little about. So theoretically, if you live to be 90 years old and you could bring a level of practice to a third of your life, think of what you could do with 30 extra years. But this is very tricky because, in a very deep sense, sleep, i.e. ignorance, is ego's ultimate refuge. So ego doesn't want to go here. And there'll be a very deep part of you every night, if you engage in this practice, that will sooner or later say, and this is why dream yoga, the moniker for dream yoga is called the measure of the path. In this regard, it's resonant with even psychological thought. Dreams and dream yoga are truth tellers. And I promise you, and this is a very important thing to know, is that dream yoga will reveal your passion for ignorance. It will show you that at a certain point, I don't want to go this far in waking up. As my teacher Punlap Rinpoche says, I would prefer to be stupid, thank you. So it's helpful to know that, so that when we feel resistance to this practice, we bring a sense of humor to it, a sense of levity. Otherwise, if the practice becomes too heavy-handed, we simply won't do it. There has to be a light touch to this particular practice. So dream yoga itself is not the same as lucid dreaming. Do you know what lucid dreaming is? Quick poll, I always do this, great. How many people here have had a lucid dream? Yeah, that's fantastic. And how many people here have meditated? Yeah. So there's, studies have shown, and informal polls like this show me, that there's a direct proportionality between meditators and those who have increased likelihood of lucidity in dreams. Because really, you're working with the same type of phenomenology. And we'll talk about this tomorrow. Every time we're distracted with a thought, it's the same expression of ignorance happening in a microgenetic form. So by becoming lucid to the contents of our own mind now, which by the way, at least one neuroscientist has said that we are aware, most people, untrained, we are aware of less than 99% of what takes place in our mind. In other words, we're only aware, we're only lucid to about 1% of the contents of our own mind. And as Kabir said of death, we can say of dream, what is found then is found now. So as we become lucid to our states of consciousness now, and tomorrow we'll talk about this in terms of the daily practice, as we wake up to the contents of our mind now, we will naturally wake up to the contents of our mind in dream. So with that said, let me give you some tips. Nighttime practices. What we're going to be doing with dream yoga is we're working with several laws of karma. And the first of these laws is referred to as the law of proximate karma, which is the second of four laws, pardon the interjection, but I want to give some substantiation to this, where this comes from. At any moment of transition, there are four laws of karma in operation. This means, moment to moment, life to life, sleep to dream to waking. And of these four laws of transitional karma, the one that we have the most control over, which is utilized in dream yoga, it's used in Bardo yoga, it's used in Pure Land teachings, is what's called the law of proximate karma. And the way I like to think of this is to play on Allen Ginsberg's idea, you may have heard of it, first thought, best thought, which refers to kind of the freshness of the present moment before second thought comes in. Well, law of proximate karma is really last thought, best thought. And what this means is that the last thought you have on your mind in a succeeding moment of consciousness has a direct and immediate impact on the succeeding moment of consciousness. We know this through associative processes. So this is something that we have direct control over. So what we do here, we take advantage of it. So what this means is when you're going to sleep, and this also involves the use of another very, very powerful law of karma, which is the law of intention. What you want to do is you want to really feel it. Don't just flap your lips. Really feel it with your heart. Tonight I will have many dreams. Tonight I will have good dreams. Tonight I will become lucid in my dreams. And if you do that, it's almost like gift wrapping a package for you, so that when you descend through the membrane of sleep, this last thought can actually seed your dream state, and then lucidity becomes really kind of instantaneous as a consequence of that. So this is something that we can do very, very easily. So what I do when I go to sleep, very simple, I lie down on my back, I settle myself, I breathe 21 times, I count, because you want to settle. You want to settle your breathing. And then what I'll do is I'll roll over on the right side. This is called the sleeping lion mudra, sleeping lion posture. This is considered the best posture in which to sleep, dream, and die. This is the posture the Buddha took when he died. And it's very interesting because what it does, it employs the subtle body, which is where subtle states of consciousness are supported. And by lying down on the right side, what you're doing is you're blocking off the channels that are associated with masculine, outgoing, kind of waking consciousness. It's called sun poison prana. And if you're really into it, if you really want to do this, what you do also is then you place your thumb on your right nostril and you actually block that nostril off. And it serves to pinch off this particular channel. It then opens the channel, the feminine channel on the left side. It's called moon nectar prana. And this is the type of mode, the feminine mode, that you want to have your mind and heart bathed in as you sleep, dream, and die, because really, in a very deep sense, when you enter these very subtle states of consciousness, you're returning to the primordial mother. You're returning to the great mother Prajnaparamita, which is a feminine quality of awareness. So then the second thing you want to do is, and again, this employs this kind of subtle body anatomy and physiology, which again is the substrate. This is what supports subtle states of mind. You want to bring your awareness to your throat. And the reason you want to do this is very interesting, because according to the inner yoga systems, consciousness is dictated by where these, they're called mind drops or bindus. According to the inner tantras, Kala Chakra Tantra and others, is that consciousness is dictated physiologically where these bindus accrete. So right now, most of us are awake. I know some people are dozing off. But most of us, our bindus are gathered in our head center. That constitutes waking consciousness. When we fall into deep dreamless sleep, these mind drops go to the heart. When we wake up, semi-wake up in the dream, they arise in the throat. So we can take advantage of this process by bringing our awareness consciously to our throat, because as it says, is where the mind goes, the winds go. Where the winds go, the bindus go, the mind drops. Where the bindus go, consciousness goes. So you can become so facile in this process. Stephen LaBerge talks about it. He's probably the preeminent academic writer on lucidity in the Western world. And he talks about a very interesting process, the acronym of which is compelling. It's called Waking-Induced Lucid Dreaming, the acronym of which is WILD. And it really is wild. So very advanced dream yoga practitioners can literally, through the power of the subtle body practices, the inner yogas, which constitute 1/3 of Vajrayana practice, you can so powerfully direct your mind essence to your throat that you can go into dreaming consciousness within a matter of seconds almost. And if you can do that, you're instantly lucid. So this is a very interesting thing to do. And one way to play with this that's very fun is imagine, and this is the classic dream yoga instruction, is visualize a red 4-petaled lotus. Because this is the heart chakra, the Sambhoga chakra. This is where consciousness goes when we sleep. And what you do here is you simply go to sleep, bring your awareness to this red chakra, and as you are going to sleep, you can just kind of trace out the chakra at your throat level. And what this does is it serves as a kind of dimmer. Because most of the time when we go to sleep, we're kind of aware, semi-aware, we're dropping down, the light is still more or less on, and all of a sudden, boom, it's off. We've lost it. So by working with this subtle lotus visualization at the throat, it's like a light dimmer. You're actually dimming your consciousness volitionally as you step it down into deep dreamless sleep. And you can become so facile with this, it's almost like a type of self-hypnosis, that you can literally, as I alluded to earlier, step your consciousness down from waking consciousness to dreaming consciousness. And if you do that, you've automatically mastered the art of dream yoga. So there's so many things to say. I'll say a little bit more about it tomorrow. Well, here's something parenthetically. One of the things that we're doing here is again, in addition to bringing the bindus down, is we're in the double sense of this phrase, we're unwinding, we're unwinding. Right now, when we're awake, and if we're too stressed out, the winds and everything are concentrated here. We're all wound up. And when you sit in meditation, your mind is going ballistic. It's too windy. That's the basis of insomnia. So when we go to sleep, we unwind, we unwind. And by, again, dropping down into our bodies, the winds drop down. This is a very powerful way to work with insomnia, by the way. In the middle of the night, you can transform an otherwise unwanted experience and bring it onto your own path. So there's so much more to say. I'll say a little bit more about it tomorrow. The last thing I want to say, in the event that you have a lucid dream tonight, what do you do when you're lucid? Because lucidity in itself will not lead you to a spiritual awakening. In fact, lucidity can lead to super samsara. So dream yoga is where you engage your mind in the dream state. And a very simple thing you can do, it's very easy. The first thing I do is just go for a flight. Just check out Boulder, fly around. It's very easy to do. The next thing that I do, then this is a very revealing thing, and it's also another instance of truth-telling, is try to walk through a wall, a dream wall. Has anybody tried to do this in a lucid dream? Or try to put your hand through a wall. This is kind of the second stage of dream yoga practice. This is extraordinarily revealing, truth-telling, because very often, even though you're fully lucid and you know you're lucid, you will come up to the wall and you still will not be able to walk through it or put your hand through it. It reveals your propensity for reification. It reveals that even in the state where you know it's an illusion, you still, by the power of habit, think it to be real. But if you stay with it, you will eventually walk through it. And a very fun trick here is if you're going to walk through the wall, you can't go through it forward, turn around and walk backwards because you don't know when you're going to hit it. So then what you do is you walk through the dream wall and you can see it coming forward. One very brief comment about sleep yoga, just to kind of complete the cycle. And Ken talks about it in his book, One Taste. You can develop a 24/7 type of awareness where you're constant consciousness. You actually never fall asleep. Historical Buddhas by definition, Shakyamuni Buddha, all the awakened ones, they literally, their bodies may rest in order to kind of integrate the elements, but their consciousness never turns off. That kind of awareness never turns off. So deep sleep practice is where you come to rest in the center of the heart. And the best analogy I've come up with here, and then I will stop, is this light of awareness is on all the time. The best analogy I've come up with is if you could somehow be like the movie Gravity, if you could somehow be thrown into outer space, whether we know it or not, in outer deep space, the light of 1 trillion suns is streaming through that space. Think of the light of awareness within our heart. This is always there. But unless an object is placed in that light, no thing is seen. So even though awareness is that which sees, you can't see awareness. So this is why we don't see dreamless sleep. This light of consciousness, this light of awareness is always on. But unless we become familiar with our nature as formless awareness, as the Dharmakaya, when consciousness turns off and wisdom turns on, if we're not familiar with it, what does consciousness do? It blacks out. So by becoming familiar with this really formless, indestructible Dharmakaya nature of our own heart-mind, this is when you start having success in sleep yoga. And at that point, you literally, every night, you literally stay completely awake. And then from there, there's all kinds of wonderful, magical things you can do. Maybe we can discuss that a little bit tomorrow. But I think that's probably enough for now. I'm sorry if I went a little bit on, but I get excited about this thing. So, pleasant dreams.